What's going on, guys? So you'll probably notice that the JD-XA isn't here with me, and that's because this isn't a typical video essay for me. Firstly, this is not a review for two reasons. One, this is going to be the most subjective video I've ever made related to a piece of gear, and two, rather than a review, let's call this a value proposition through my eyes. As longtime viewers know, this channel isn't in any way objective, and it never was meant to be. I tell stories through my experience as a musician. So before watching, I just wanted to get that out of the way. I want to thank Perfect Circuit here in Burbank for letting me borrow the JD-XA for like a month. They didn't pay me. It's not sponsored by them or Roland, but they are my local shop personally, and they do ship worldwide. So free advertising for one of my favorite small businesses. Check them out in person or online at perfectcircuit.com. So here we go. The Roland JD-XA is one of the most confusing synthesizers I've ever used. Its identity is stuck between the most budget beginner synth and the top of the line flagship. It even kind of goes over the top with its feature set, all while at the same time literally letting me down when I step back and look at the big picture, but I'm going to explain more. First, some facts about the Roland JD-XA. It was released in 2015, and that was a really good year for synthesizers. The Prophet 6 came out that year, and the Mother 32 as well. And the year before, the Modal 002, a personal favorite. So the JD-XA had an analog and digital synth engine, the latter allowing 64 voices of polyphony. It had 5 types of analog filters and an analog amp section. But the JD-XA has some stiff competition on the analog and digital front. While coming in at only $2,500 at the time, the JD-XA on the surface seemed to be a steal. So why do I say that it lets me down when I step back and look at the big picture? Well, Roland had been releasing many synths in the 2000s. Classics like the V-Synth and the V-Synth GT, to lesser known loved ones like the Gaia and the Jupiter 80. But the JD-XA was to be the first analog synthesizer released from Roland since 1986. Yes, that means that Roland, the creator of the Juno 106, the Jupiter 6, the Jupiter 8, the history and legendary company hadn't built on its analog foundation in 30 years, and this was to be it. So what did Roland give us after 3 decades of waiting? 4 voices of analog polyphony. 4 voices shoehorned into a synth with the superlateral engine. And while obviously it was marketed as a crossover, I don't think anyone really knew what that meant at the time. On the same token, the JD-XA to this day is kind of one of a kind. Name another synthesizer that can do what it does. I'll wait. Real quick, guys, do me a favor and like and subscribe the video. If you disagree, throw a comment in the comment section. The JD-XA is a polarizing piece, and I want to hear it. So back to the video. Before we go further, let's talk about my favorite feature of the JD-XA, the real analog vocoder. So years ago, I reviewed the VP03 from Roland. It was the boutique one, and this JD-XA vocoder is the real deal, and it sounds like it. The feature set of this vocoder is way beyond what I expected, but there's a problem. I'm a vocoder fan, so it couldn't really lose in this aspect. The microphone input even provides phantom power, so that's special. To me, the Roland JD-XA could be a sound designer's dream, but I'm not a sound designer. So I guess for those of you out there who are, you'll have to let me know how you do with sound designing on the tiny screen, as most of the parameters are locked down to menu diving, and that's not fun for me. It's the same issue that I pointed out that bothered me on the JD-XA. Having a screen this small and a synth this deep just boggles the mind in 2015. Oh, and speaking of the JD-XA, I want to speak about the value proposition here. The JD-XA is, in my opinion, the best $500 synth on the market, speaking from a bang for your buck perspective. Is the JD-XA, which is 5 times more expensive, 5 times better? To me, no, and here's why. In the JD-XA, you get almost the same, I'll call it real world functionality of the JD-XA, plus you get tons of useful, sets of drum kits, and it all makes the JD-XA the perfect all-in-one sketchboard type synth. And that's for only 500 bucks. For my everyday use, it does 90% of everything I'd need at a fifth of the price, and it's not being so deep actually makes it quicker to use. Small side note, for those of you who think that the JD-XA is a fingerprint and dust magnet, yeah, you are totally right, and honestly, the build quality is just average for what is $2,500. One thing I did test was the ability to see the front panel in tough, bright stage lights, and honestly, the glare isn't that bad. A plus is that the weight of the JD-XA is only 14 pounds. Compare that with the monstrous 39-pound Roland JD-80. If I'm going to do small tours, weight really matters. So if you're choosing based on portability, JD-XA all day. So I said a lot, and where do I stand? Well, the JD-XA is the greatest synth that could have been. It's honestly a fantastic piece for a very, very specific person because everything in the kitchen sink was thrown in. And if I had more patience and more money to waste, I'd say that this is absolutely for someone with no hardware yet. If I had absolutely no hardware synths, this covers a ton of ground. But for those who think that the JD-XA is a modern classic, I beg to differ. Sure, it could have been, but it's not doing anything better than the rest from a practical point of view for me. Fine, you get the real analog vocoder and you get a huge digital sound palette that can modulate analog parts, but you can get that for less. The bottom line for me is with any piece, it's not about the specs. It's not even just about the sound. It's about how I feel emotionally when playing it. Did it inspire creativity? When it comes to the JD-XA, honestly, I felt no type of way. Is the sound impressive? Yes, but that's not unique to the XA. There isn't enough analog polyphony to make that the selling point for $2,000 these days. I really gotta be wowed, and the XA didn't do that. So before I go, I wanna give a huge shout out to Perfect Circuit here in Burbank. Thank them for letting me borrow the JD-XA. It lets me say whatever I want and I don't have to sugarcoat it. So if you guys got value out of my very honest opinion, like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see ya in the next one.